The first thing police heard was gunfire echoing from inside the workshop. They weren't at a range, they were standing outside an ordinary garage unit on a Sussex industrial estate. Behind the shutter, 3 men were test-firing homemade pistols, built from scratch, with no serial numbers, no paperwork, and no clue they were seconds away from a full-scale raid. This wasn't London or Manchester, it was Hailsham, a quiet market town where no one expected Britain's first illegal gun-making factory to appear. Inside that unit, Kyle Wood, Greg Akehurst, and Mark Kinman were running a small-scale operation that would send untraceable weapons onto the streets of London. And when the National Crime Agency stormed the site, what they found stunned even veteran investigators. The raid took place on the 18th of August. Officers had spent months tracking unusual orders, late-night deliveries, and strange metallic noises from the unit listed as MFK Engineering. When the team moved in, one of the suspects pulled a gun. Another tried to run. Tasers dropped both before a shot was fired. What police uncovered inside was less a warehouse and more a precision workshop. Jigs, drills, half-assembled gun frames, metal filings across benches, and in the centre, a single Browning 1922 pistol. It wasn't just decoration, it was the template. Every illegal handgun being made here was based on that single historic design. Forensic experts later confirmed that the trio weren't converting antiques. They were manufacturing brand new pistols from raw materials. Barrels, slides, firing pins, magazines, all machined to fit the Browning model perfectly. And they weren't making them for collectors. Each gun was destined for sale on the criminal market, sold for around £5,000 apiece to gangs across London. The oldest of the group, 63-year-old Mark Kinman, had been a mechanic most of his life. He once repaired gearboxes in that same unit, but as the years passed and money ran thin, he turned his engineering skills towards something darker, building lethal weapons that looked and functioned like the real thing. In police interviews, he insisted he wasn't a gangster, just a man who got involved in something he shouldn't have. By the time of the raid, the 3 had already produced multiple working pistols. The National Crime Agency later linked at least 6 of them to shootings, including 2 attempted murders in London. Ballistic testing showed 1 bullet removed from a victim's chest in Wandsworth matched the exact barrel markings from a gun built in that Hailsham unit. Another weapon turned up months later in Brixton, tied to a second attack. Investigators also found parts that could have been assembled into more than 100 additional guns. Not 121 completed firearms, but components, slides, and extensions ready for finishing. Each weapon shared one crucial feature: no serial number, no manufacturer mark, and no traceable origin. For detectives, it was like finding a ghost factory. Every part had been designed to disappear. Even the bullets were hand-loaded, empty shells filled with shotgun propellant. Dangerous to use, but deadly when they worked. Chris Farrimond, the NCA's Director of Investigations, called it the first fully functioning firearms factory ever discovered in Britain. But for the men inside, it wasn't about making history. It was about survival and money. Kyle Wood and Greg Akehurst were both 30, both struggling financially, both already known to police for smaller offences. Now they were standing in a factory full of evidence linking them to London's criminal underworld. During this search, Akehurst was found with a loaded pistol tucked into his waistband. Wood had a bag of ammunition on him when he was caught. Their plan had been simple: sell the guns to buyers through middlemen, collect quick cash, and stay off the radar. But the radar found them first. In court, prosecutors described the operation as industrial-scale manufacturing. Defense lawyers tried to soften the image, arguing it was 3 men working out of a small unit, not a sprawling syndicate. But the fact remained: 6 working guns had already left the site and were being used in violent crime. Judge Susan Tapping, sentencing the pair, called the case of the gravest possible seriousness. These firearms, she said, were of significant value to the criminal underworld. They were untraceable, and thus highly desirable. Creating weapons like this had only one purpose: to be sold to people who intended to use live ammunition. Wood was jailed for 11.5 years. Akehurst received 18. Kinman died in custody before he could be sentenced. Altogether, nearly 30 years behind bars, but the damage had already been done. Police still believe tens of the pistols made their remain in circulation today. The story doesn't read like a Hollywood plot. There were no machine gun belts or massive stockpiles, just a small workshop, a few skilled hands, and a design simple enough to mass produce quietly. It showed how little it takes to feed the demand for guns in Britain, a country where legal firearm ownership is tightly controlled, yet illegal weapons still flow through the black market. The Browning 1922 template gave them everything they needed: reliability, simplicity, and compact design. What Kinman brought was precision. He had the experience to make gun parts fit within millimeters, using tools meant for car engines. Every part could have passed for a piece of machinery until it was assembled into a working weapon. Neighbours on the estate later told reporters they'd seen Kinman machining metal parts, but assumed they were valves or gear components. One engineer in the next unit said, "He'd show me bits of metal and I never thought anything of it. Only later did it click. Those were gun parts." Forensic teams eventually recovered more than 400 separate exhibits from the site: barrels, slides, firing pins, grips, even boxes of small extensions that matched the weapons later seized. It took them 3 full days to catalogue everything. Each new item proved how systematic the process had become. Akehurst's lawyer said his client had spiralled into debt after gambling problems and was receiving threats from loan sharks. Wood's lawyer said he wasn't a career criminal, just someone caught up in the wrong network, trying to make quick money. Both men had young children waiting at home. Both admitted guilt, but neither seemed to understand the scale of what they'd helped create. What began as a few side projects had turned into a functioning gun line, feeding violence miles away from the quiet Sussex estate they operated from. The NCA called it a turning point in UK firearms enforcement. Not because of the number of weapons, but because of what it proved was possible with basic machinery, skill, and intent. The aftermath stretched beyond the sentencing. Each recovered pistol became part of a separate investigation. Police forces across London traced serial shooting cases back to weapons with the same unique machining marks. That's how detectives could tell the story of a gun, from the moment it was milled on Kinman's workbench to the night it was fired on a London street. For the victims, those details don't erase the damage. For investigators, they build a clearer map of how local manufacturing is fueling national crime. And for communities across Britain, it's a reminder that organised crime doesn't always look like gang wars or drug shipments. Sometimes it looks like an engineer, a mechanic, and a rented garage. In a country that prides itself on strict gun control, the idea of a homegrown weapons factory shocked the public. It shattered the assumption that illegal guns only came from abroad. And while the men behind it are now locked up, their creation lives on, literally, in the form of weapons still unaccounted for. The Hailsham case wasn't about scale, it was about possibility. It showed how easily knowledge, equipment, and desperation can merge into something deadly. No exaggeration is needed to tell this story. A small industrial unit in Sussex turned into a pipeline of untraceable weapons. 3 men, 1 dead, 2 imprisoned, changed the way British law enforcement looks at gun crime forever. And it all started with the sound of a single test fire echoing from behind a metal shutter on an ordinary street.